The space station Nexus Prime floated like a metal city among the stars. Commander Lee Dong-soo pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship as they approached the docking bay. The station was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. It stretched for miles in every direction, covered in lights that blinked like fireflies. "First time seeing something like this?" asked Ambassador Park So-young from the seat beside him. She was checking her documents one more time, making sure every page was in order. "Yes," Lee replied quietly. "On Earth, our biggest space stations could fit inside one small section of this place." The transport shook slightly as it entered the docking bay. Through the window, Lee could see dozens of alien ships. Some looked like giant insects made of metal. Others were shaped like crystals or flowing water frozen in time. A few ships defied all logic, seeming to bend and twist in ways that hurt to look at. "Remember," Park said as they prepared to leave the ship, "we are here to make friends. Earth needs allies out here." Lee nodded and straightened his uniform. The dark blue fabric was simple compared to what he expected the aliens might wear, but it was clean and professional. His boots were polished until they reflected light like mirrors. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Immediately, Lee noticed the air smelled different. It was cleaner than Earth air, but also strange. There was a metallic taste that made his tongue tingle. Two alien beings waited for them in the corridor. The first looked somewhat like a human but had blue skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. The second creature was more difficult to understand. It seemed to be made of living shadow that moved and flowed like smoke. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said the blue-skinned alien. Its voice was high and musical. "I am Guide Keeper Zenth. This is my assistant, Umbral Kess. We will escort you to the council chambers." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered in symbols and pictures that told stories Lee could not understand. Other aliens passed them in the hallways. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others crawled on the ceiling or floated through the air without touching anything. "How many different species are in the council?" Park asked as they walked. "Currently, we have representatives from 437 different worlds," Zenth replied proudly. "Each brings their own unique contributions to our great alliance." Lee studied every alien they passed. A creature that looked like a walking tree nodded politely at them. Something that might have been made entirely of crystal chimed like a bell when they walked by. In one alcove, he saw beings that appeared to be living liquid having what seemed like a conversation. "Here we are," Zenth announced as they stopped before enormous doors. Each door was at least 50 feet tall and covered in intricate carvings. "The Grand Council Chamber. Today you will meet representatives from over 200 worlds." The doors opened slowly with a deep rumbling sound that Lee felt in his chest. The chamber beyond was breathtaking. It was shaped like a giant bowl with curved rows of seats rising up on all sides. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above them. In the center was a circular platform where a podium stood waiting. Hundreds of alien beings filled the seats. Lee had thought he was prepared for this moment. But seeing so many different forms of life in one place was overwhelming. Some aliens were tiny, no bigger than house cats. Others were massive, filling seats meant for creatures 3 times human size. The noise in the chamber was incredible. Dozens of different languages mixed together into a symphony of sounds. Some aliens spoke in musical tones, others made clicking or buzzing noises. A few seemed to communicate with lights that flashed across their skin. At the front of the chamber, on a raised platform that looked down on the central floor, sat the most impressive alien Lee had yet seen. It was clearly reptilian, with dark red scales that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were bright yellow and never seemed to blink. When it moved, Lee could see muscles rippling under its scaled skin. "That is Speaker Vorthak," Zenth whispered. "He leads our council sessions and speaks for all member worlds in official matters." Vorthak raised one clawed hand, and the chamber fell silent immediately. His voice when he spoke was deep and commanding. It echoed off the walls and seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," Vorthak said. "We have traveled far through space to reach this moment. Your world has requested membership in our Galactic Council. This is a serious matter that requires careful consideration." Lee and Park walked to the center of the chamber and stood beside the podium. Lee felt hundreds of alien eyes watching his every move. Some of the creatures were clearly studying him like he was an interesting specimen in a laboratory. "Earth is honored by this opportunity," Park said, her voice clear and confident despite the intimidating surroundings. We believe our world has much to offer your alliance. Tell us about your world, commanded a new voice. Lee turned to see a massive insect-like creature with 6 arms and wings that sparkled like metal foil. What makes Earth worthy of joining our ancient council? Park began to speak about Earth's history, culture, and achievements. She talked about human art, science, and exploration. She mentioned Earth's diverse environments and the different nations that had learned to work together. This is all very interesting, Vorthak interrupted after several minutes. But we must discuss more practical matters. Every member world of our council must contribute to our common defense. Pirates, hostile empires, and unknown dangers threaten our space constantly. The chamber murmured with agreement. Several aliens nodded their various types of heads. Military service is not optional, continued a voice from the upper seats. Every member provides soldiers, ships, and weapons to protect our alliance. Lee stepped forward slightly. This was the moment he had been preparing for during the entire journey to Nexus Prime. Earth maintains professional military forces across all necessary branches, he said clearly. Our Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps work together to defend our world and our interests. Excellent, Vorthak said with what might have been approval. Numbers, please. How many soldiers can Earth contribute to our defense forces? Lee took a deep breath. He had known this question would come, but he also knew his answer would not be what they expected. Earth's active military personnel total 2.1 million across all branches. He stated in a clear, steady voice. For a moment, the chamber was completely silent. Then the laughter began. The laughter filled the chamber like a storm. Commander Lee Dong-Soo stood perfectly still as hundreds of alien voices joined together in mockery. Some creatures roared with deep belly laughs that shook the floor. Others made high whistling sounds that hurt human ears. A few aliens in the back rows were slapping their seats and rolling around with amusement. Ambassador Park So-young felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had expected some surprise at Earth's numbers, but not this level of ridicule. She looked at Lee and saw that his face remained calm, though she noticed his hands were clenched into fists behind his back. Speaker Vorthak raised his clawed hand again. Slowly the laughter died down to scattered chuckles and whispers. 2 million, Vorthak repeated, his yellow eyes gleaming with amusement. Surely there has been a translation error. Perhaps you meant 2 billion. No error, Speaker, Lee replied in the same steady voice. 2.1 million active military personnel. This brought another wave of laughter, though not as loud as before. An alien that looked like a giant crab stood up in the middle section of seats. My world of Kalos maintains 15 billion soldiers, the crab creature announced proudly. We recruit from every family on our planet. 15 billion is nothing, shouted another voice from across the chamber. A being that seemed to be made of living rock was speaking. The Hegrix Empire commands 50 billion warriors across 12 star systems. More aliens began sharing their numbers. Each one tried to impress the others with bigger and more ridiculous claims. 70 billion soldiers in our fleet, called one voice. 100 billion troops ready for battle, yelled another. My species has been breeding warriors for 1,000 years. We have more soldiers than your world has people, declared a creature covered in spikes. Captain Kim Min-ho stepped forward from where he had been standing quietly behind Lee and Park. He was younger than Lee, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. He carried a tablet computer that contained detailed reports about galactic military forces. Permission to speak, Commander? Kim asked quietly. Lee nodded once. Kim activated his tablet and looked up at the alien delegates. His voice was clear and professional. According to our research, the average galactic military engagement involves approximately 10 million casualties per battle, he said. Standard procedure appears to be mass deployment of lightly trained conscripts with minimal equipment. The laughter stopped abruptly. Several aliens leaned forward in their seats to hear better. Your point, human? Asked General Thexmore, the massive insect creature with 6 arms. On Earth, we prefer efficiency over size, Kim replied. Our military doctrine focuses on training, technology, and tactical superiority rather than overwhelming numbers. This brought snorts of disbelief from around the chamber. Training, repeated an alien voice mockingly. What good is training when you face 1 billion enemy soldiers? Numbers win wars, little human, called another creature. This is basic military science. A new alien stood up near the front of the chamber. This one was different from the others Lee had seen. It had cybernetic implants covering half its body and scars that suggested it had survived many battles. When it spoke, its voice was rough and experienced. "I am War Master Greyloth," the creature said. "I have commanded armies across 30 star systems and fought in over 200 major battles." The chamber grew quiet. Even the other aliens seemed to respect this one. "In my experience," Greyloth continued, "small armies die quickly. I have personally witnessed the destruction of elite forces by simple, overwhelming numbers. Your 2 million soldiers would last perhaps one day against a proper galactic army." "With respect, War Master," Lee said, stepping forward, "Earth has developed different approaches to warfare." "Different approaches?" Greyloth asked with what might have been amusement. "There is only one approach that matters in real war. You bring more soldiers than your enemy and you crush them." "What about special forces?" Park asked suddenly. "Surely you recognize the value of elite troops." Several aliens made dismissive sounds. "Elite troops are still just troops," said Thexmore. "If you have 1 million elite soldiers and I have 1 billion regular ones, mathematics decides the outcome." "On my world," added another voice, "we consider any soldier who cannot be easily replaced to be poorly designed. True military efficiency comes from having unlimited replacements." War Master Greyloth moved closer to the central platform, his cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Lee. "Tell me, human commander, what is the largest battle your species has ever fought?" Lee considered the question carefully. "The largest single engagement involved approximately 4 million combatants across all forces." 4 million total, Greyloth repeated slowly. "I have personally commanded single battles with 20 times that number. The Battle of Xerion Prime involved 80 million soldiers on each side," the chamber murmured with impressed sounds. 80 million casualties in 3 days, Greyloth continued. "This is normal for galactic warfare. Your entire military could not fill the ranks of soldiers we lose in a typical skirmish." Sub-Admiral Jin Haiwan, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. She was a compact woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen decades of military service. "War Master Greyloth," she said respectfully, "may I ask about the efficiency of these large battles?" "Efficiency?" Greyloth seemed surprised by the question. "Victory is efficiency. The side with more soldiers wins, but at what cost?" Jin asked. 80 million dead soldiers represents enormous resources, training time, and economic investment. "Soldiers are replaceable," Greyloth replied with a shrug. "Planets have billions of people. We simply conscript more. On Earth," Jin said carefully, "we cannot afford to treat our people as replaceable resources." This comment brought more laughter from the aliens. "Then you will never win a real war," declared Thexmore. "Sentiment has no place in military strategy." Speaker Vorthak leaned forward in his chair. His yellow eyes gleamed with what looked like cruel amusement. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should demonstrate the difference between galactic military reality and human fantasies." The chamber fell silent. Every alien seemed to understand that something important was about to happen. "I propose a simple test," Vorthak continued. "Earth may send its very best soldiers to face one of our standard garrison units. Let us see how your training and efficiency perform against real numbers." War Master Greyloth's scarred face showed obvious interest. "An excellent suggestion, Speaker. I volunteer to provide the opposing force. How many of your best troops can Earth provide?" asked Thexmore. Lee looked at Park, then back at the assembled aliens. 100 soldiers. 100, Vorthak repeated. "Against how many of our forces?" Greyloth considered for a moment. 10,000 should be sufficient. Standard garrison troops with basic equipment. "Nothing fancy." The chamber erupted in excited conversation. Aliens were already placing bets on how quickly the humans would be defeated. "This is not necessary," Park said quickly. "We came here for diplomatic discussions, not combat demonstrations." "On the contrary," Vorthak replied, "this is very necessary. How can we trust Earth's military contributions if we do not know their true capabilities?" Lee stepped closer to the podium. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber. "We accept." 3 days after Commander Lee Dongsu accepted the challenge, a small Earth transport ship docked at Nexus Prime. The aliens who gathered to watch the arrival expected to see a massive military vessel filled with weapons and equipment. Instead, they saw a simple gray ship no bigger than a cargo hauler. War Master Greyloth stood on the observation deck with Speaker Vorthak and several other council members. His cybernetic eye zoomed in on the ship as the docking bay doors opened. That cannot be their entire force, Greyloth said with disbelief. Perhaps they are using multiple ships, suggested General Thexmore. No, replied Vorthak, checking his datapad. Our sensors show only one Earth vessel in the system. The ship's cargo ramp lowered with a soft hiss. The first human to emerge was a tall man in woodland camouflage uniform. His movements were smooth and confident, like a predator walking through familiar territory. Behind him came 99 other soldiers, each carrying a simple backpack and basic rifle. 100 humans, counted an alien observer. Just as promised, Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon led his team across the docking bay floor. He had been commanding special operations units for 15 years, and his weathered face showed the experience of countless missions. His soldiers followed in loose formation, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The aliens watching from above were amazed by how small the human force looked. Each soldier carried less equipment than a single alien warrior normally needed for basic combat. "Where are their heavy weapons?" asked Thexmore. "Where are their vehicles?" added another voice. "Where is their body armor?" wondered a third alien. Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo walked beside Colonel Yoon, his sharp eyes taking in every detail of the station's layout. He had fought in more conflicts than he could count, and his instincts told him they were being studied like laboratory specimens. "Sir," Choi said quietly, "we have at least 50 different species watching us from the upper levels." "Good," Yoon replied without looking up. "Let them watch. They will learn something today." The human team was escorted to a briefing room where War Master Greyloth waited with his staff. The alien commander was even more impressive up close. His scars told stories of battles fought across the galaxy, and his cybernetic implants hummed with quiet power. "Welcome, humans," Greyloth said, his voice respectful despite his earlier mockery. "I am curious to see what Earth considers elite soldiers." Yoon stepped forward and offered a military salute. "Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon, commanding officer of this detachment. We are ready to begin whenever you are." "Excellent," Greyloth replied. "The testing ground is a small moon called Karo 7. It has varied terrain, including forests, mountains, and desert regions. Perfect for military exercises." Staff Sergeant Oda Yoon activated her communication equipment and began scanning local frequencies. She was the team's intelligence specialist, responsible for gathering information about their opponents and environment. "How many soldiers will we be facing?" Yoon asked. 10,000 Kryllox warriors, Greyloth answered proudly. "They are one of our most reliable garrison species. Each warrior stands 8 feet tall and weighs approximately 400 pounds. They are naturally aggressive and very difficult to kill." Technical Sergeant Kang Bo-ram studied the tactical displays showing Karo 7's geography. As the team's demolitions expert, she was already identifying key terrain features and potential ambush sites. "What weapons will your Kryllox warriors carry?" Bo-ram asked. "Standard plasma rifles, personal shields, and combat armor," Greyloth replied. "Nothing too advanced but effective against most opponents." "And vehicles?" inquired Choi. "Armored transports, heavy weapons platforms, and air support," Greyloth said. "Everything a proper military force requires." The aliens in the room exchanged confident looks. 10,000 well-equipped warriors against 100 humans with basic rifles seemed like an unfair contest. "When do we begin?" Yoon asked. "Tomorrow at dawn," Greyloth answered. "My forces are already in position on Karo 7. You will have 48 hours to prepare once you arrive." That evening, the human team gathered in their assigned quarters aboard Nexus Prime. The room was sparse but clean, with simple bunks and basic facilities. Yoon spread tactical maps across a table while his soldiers checked their equipment. "Sir," said Sergeant First Class Nam Tae-hyun, the team's senior sniper, "these Kryllox warriors sound formidable." "Every enemy is formidable until you find their weakness," Yoon replied. "Daeun, what did your scans reveal?" Staff Sergeant Oda Yoon consulted her notes. "The Kryllox communicate using radio frequencies similar to our own. Their equipment operates on predictable power signatures. Most importantly, they appear to use traditional military formations and tactics." "Meaning?" asked Sergeant Lee Soo-jin, the team medic. "Meaning they think like the aliens we have been observing," Daeun explained. "Large groups, direct approaches, overwhelming firepower." Corporal Park Junho, the heavy weapons specialist, looked up from cleaning his rifle. "What about their numbers advantage?" Numbers are only an advantage if you can use them effectively, Choi said with a slight smile. Large groups are easy to track, easy to predict, and easy to disrupt. Yoon gathered his soldiers around the tactical map. Remember your training. We are not here to fight 10,000 enemies at once. We are here to fight one enemy 10,000 times. The next morning, the human team boarded their transport for the journey to Karo 7. As they prepared to leave, hundreds of aliens gathered to watch their departure. Many were placing bets on how long the humans would survive. The current odds are 40-1 against the humans, announced one alien bookmaker. I give them 6 hours, called another voice. 6 hours is generous, replied a third. I say 2 hours maximum. War Master Greyloth stood with Speaker Vorthak on the command deck, watching the human transport disappear into space. Are you certain 10,000 warriors is sufficient? Vorthak asked. More than sufficient, Greyloth replied confidently. If anything, I worry we are being too harsh on them. Perhaps we should call off this demonstration, suggested General Thexmore. The humans seem professional enough in their own way. No, Greyloth said firmly. They need to learn the reality of galactic warfare. Better they learn it here in a controlled environment than in actual combat where the consequences would be permanent. On the transport ship, Colonel Yoon sat quietly as Karo 7 grew larger in the viewport. His soldiers were calm and focused, checking their gear one final time. Sir, Choi said softly, the aliens really believe they are going to crush us. Good, Yoon replied. Confident enemies make mistakes, and we are very good at taking advantage of mistakes. The transport ship entered Karo 7's atmosphere as the sun began to rise over the small moon's surface. Below them, 10,000 Kryllox warriors waited in their camps, confident that the coming battle would be over before the day was through. They were about to learn that humans had a very different definition of warfare. The sun rose slowly over Karo 7, painting the rocky landscape in shades of orange and red. Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon crouched behind a cluster of boulders, watching the Kryllox army through his binoculars. 10,000 alien warriors were spread across the valley below, their camps stretching for miles in every direction. The Kryllox were impressive creatures. Each one stood 8 feet tall with thick armor plating covering their bodies. Their plasma rifles gleamed in the morning light, and their vehicles rumbled like mechanical beasts as they prepared for battle. Sir, whispered Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo from his position nearby, they are forming up in standard attack formations. Yoon nodded without lowering his binoculars. The aliens were doing exactly what he had expected. They were organizing into massive columns, preparing to advance across the open ground like armies from ancient Earth history. Daeun. Yoon spoke softly into his radio. Report. Staff Sergeant Oh Daeun's voice crackled back through his earpiece. All enemy communications are being monitored. They expect to reach our position within 2 hours. Commander Brixthor is leading the assault personally. Copy, Yoon replied. Boram, are your surprises ready? Technical Sergeant Kang Boram's voice came from somewhere deep in the rocky terrain. Charges placed at 17 strategic locations. Waiting for your signal. Yoon smiled slightly. During their 48 hours of preparation, his team had not been idle. While the Kryllox had been setting up their impressive camps and organizing their formations, the humans had been moving like ghosts through the landscape. Nam, do you have your targets identified? Yoon asked. Sergeant First Class Nam Tae-hyun was positioned on a ridge nearly 2 miles away from the main Kryllox force. His sniper rifle was perfectly calibrated, and he had been watching the enemy commanders for hours. I count 12 high-value targets, Nam replied quietly. Officers, communication specialists, and vehicle commanders all marked. Excellent, Yoon said. Sujin, status report. Sergeant Lee Sujin checked her medical supplies one final time. Ready for casualty care, sir. Though hopefully we will not need it. In the valley below, Commander Brixthor raised his massive plasma rifle above his head. The Kryllox warriors responded with a roar that echoed off the surrounding cliffs. Their war cry was deafening, designed to terrify enemies before battle even began. Advance! Brixthor bellowed in his alien language. 10,000 Kryllox warriors began moving forward in perfect formation. Their heavy boots shook the ground as they marched. Their vehicles followed behind, ready to provide fire support when they encountered the human positions. Aboard Nexus Prime, War Master Greyloth watched the battle through orbital sensors. The command center was filled with alien observers, all eager to see how quickly the humans would be defeated. The Krylloks are moving with excellent discipline, Greyloth noted with satisfaction. This should be over within the hour. Speaker Vorthak leaned forward in his chair. Where are the humans? Our sensors cannot locate them. They are probably hiding in the caves, suggested General Thexmore, waiting for the inevitable surrender. On Caro 7, the Krylloks formation reached the halfway point across the valley. Their advance was textbook perfect. Exactly the kind of military movement that had won battles across the galaxy for thousands of years. Then Nam Tae-hyun opened fire. His first shot traveled nearly 2 miles in complete silence. The bullet struck Commander Brixthor directly in the head, penetrating his helmet and dropping him instantly. The massive alien fell forward without a sound, his rifle clattering on the rocky ground. The second shot came 3 seconds later, hitting the Krylloks communication officer. The third shot eliminated a vehicle commander. By the time the fourth shot rang out, the enemy formation was beginning to panic. Contact, Nam reported calmly into his radio. 4 targets down. The Krylloks warriors looked around frantically, trying to locate their attacker. They could hear the gunshots echoing off the cliffs, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Return fire, screamed a Krylloks lieutenant, taking command after his commander's death. Thousands of plasma rifles opened up, shooting at rocks, shadows, and empty air. The aliens were firing at ghosts, unable to see their enemies. Now, Yoon said quietly into his radio. Technical Sergeant Kang Bo-ram pressed the detonator. 17 carefully placed explosives erupted simultaneously across the valley. The charges had been positioned to cause maximum confusion, rather than maximum casualties. Rocks tumbled down from the cliffs, blocking escape routes. Bridges collapsed, cutting off reinforcements. Most importantly, the communication towers that the Krylloks had set up were completely destroyed. What is happening? Greyloth demanded from the command center. The tactical display is showing massive explosions. Unknown, replied a technician. All communication with the ground forces has been lost. In the valley, the Krylloks formation was beginning to fall apart. Without their commanders and without communication, individual units started making their own decisions. Some groups tried to advance toward where they thought the humans might be hiding. Others retreated toward their base camps. A few units began firing at each other in the smoke and confusion. Staff Sergeant Oh Da-eun and Corporal Park Jun-ho emerged from concealed positions behind the disorganized aliens. They moved like shadows, using the smoke and chaos as cover. Their job was to eliminate specific targets and gather intelligence. Supply depot located, Da-eun reported. Moving to disable. Vehicle park identified, Jun-ho added. Beginning demolition. Small explosions began erupting throughout the Krylloks camps. Ammunition stockpiles detonated in brilliant flashes. Fuel dumps burst into towering pillars of flame. Transport vehicles exploded one after another as Jun-ho worked his way through the parking areas. By midday, the Krylloks force was in complete disarray. They had lost most of their officers, all of their communications, half of their supplies, and nearly all of their vehicles. Thousands of warriors were wandering around the battlefield, unable to coordinate with each other. Casualties? Yoon asked over the radio. 0 human casualties, reported Sergeant Lee Soo-jin. Enemy losses estimated at 3,000 killed or wounded. How is this possible? Vorthak asked in the command center. 10,000 warriors cannot simply disappear. Sir, reported a sensor technician. We are detecting movement throughout the battle zone, but we cannot identify specific targets. The humans are still there, Greyloth said grimly. They are just better at hiding than we expected. As the afternoon wore on, the situation became worse for the Krylloks. Small groups of warriors would try to regroup, only to be eliminated by invisible attackers. Supply convoys attempting to reach the battlefield were ambushed and destroyed. Medical teams trying to help wounded soldiers found themselves under fire from unknown positions. Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo led a team of soldiers through the enemy camps like wolves, hunting sheep. They moved silently, striking without warning and disappearing before the aliens could respond. Enemy morale appears to be breaking, Choi reported. Multiple units are attempting to retreat. Let them go, Yoon replied. We want survivors to tell the story. By evening, fewer than 4,000 Krylloks warriors remained in fighting condition. They had gathered in a defensive circle near their original landing site. trying to protect themselves from attacks that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The alien lieutenant who had taken command after Brixthor's death was wounded and exhausted. His remaining warriors were jumping at shadows, firing their weapons at every sound and movement. "This is impossible," he muttered in his alien language. "Where are they?" As if in answer to his question, Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon stepped out from behind a rock formation less than 50 yards away. He was alone, his hands raised to show he was not immediately threatening. The remaining Kryllox warriors spun around and aimed their weapons at him. Dozens of plasma rifles focused on the single human figure. "I am Colonel Yoon of the Earth Forces," he called out clearly. "I wish to discuss surrender terms." The alien lieutenant stared at him in disbelief. "Surrender? You wish to surrender?" "No," Yoon replied calmly. "I am offering you the chance to surrender to us." The lieutenant looked around at his thousands of remaining warriors, then back at the single human standing in the open. "You are one soldier." "We are 4,000, are you?" Yoon asked with a slight smile. At that moment, 99 other human soldiers emerged from concealment positions all around the Kryllox formation. They had been there the entire time, invisible and waiting. The alien lieutenant realized with growing horror that his defensive position was actually a carefully prepared trap. The second day of battle dawned with thick smoke rising from the Kryllox camps. Lieutenant Krixmar stood among the wreckage of what had been a proud military force just 24 hours earlier. Around him, the surviving aliens moved nervously, jumping at every sound and shadow. "Status report," Krixmar demanded from his remaining officers. "Sir," replied a wounded sergeant, "we have lost contact with 7 companies. The humans destroyed our communication network completely." "Casualties?" 4,000 confirmed dead or wounded, the sergeant said quietly. "Another 2,000 are missing, probably captured." Krixmar felt sick. In one day, the humans had eliminated more than half his force without suffering a single confirmed casualty. It was impossible, but the evidence surrounded him everywhere he looked. "Where are our reinforcements?" asked another officer. "Commander Thexavel was supposed to arrive with 30,000 fresh troops this morning," Krixmar replied. "They are 3 hours overdue." What Krixmar did not know was that the reinforcement convoy had been ambushed 50 miles away. Warrant Officer Han Kyung-soo had used his stealth aircraft to track the alien ships as they approached the battle zone. His precise strikes had disabled the convoy's engines, leaving 30,000 Kryllox warriors stranded in the desert without transportation. "Sir," reported Staff Sergeant Oh Yoon from her hidden position overlooking the alien camps, "the enemy is attempting to reorganize into defensive positions." Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon studied the tactical display on his portable computer. The Kryllox were doing exactly what he had expected. When faced with an invisible enemy, they were pulling back into tight formations that felt safer but actually made them easier targets. "Bo-ram," Yoon spoke into his radio. "Are you ready for Phase 2? Technical Sergeant Kang Bo-ram checked her demolition charges one final time. During the night, she had placed explosives throughout the alien defensive perimeter. The Kryllox thought they were safe behind their barricades, but they were actually sitting inside a carefully prepared trap. "Ready, sir," Bo-ram replied. "Charges placed at 43 locations around their defensive positions." "Soo-jin, how are our prisoners?" Sergeant Lee Soo-jin was caring for nearly 800 captured Kryllox warriors in a secure area several miles from the main battle. Despite being enemies, she was providing full medical care and proper food to all prisoners. "All prisoners are healthy and cooperative, sir," Soo-jin reported. "Many are asking questions about our tactics and training methods." This was another part of the human strategy. By treating prisoners well, they were gathering valuable intelligence while also demonstrating that defeat did not mean death or torture. "Nam, target assessment," Yoon requested. Sergeant First Class Nam Tai-hyun had been observing the reorganized Kryllox positions through his scope for hours. His trained eye could identify key weaknesses in their defensive setup. "Sir, they have concentrated their remaining officers in 3 command bunkers," Nam reported. "All bunkers are within range. I also count 12 heavy weapons positions that could be eliminated simultaneously." "Excellent," Yoon replied. "Begin precision elimination of command structure." Nam's first shot traveled across 2 miles of battlefield in perfect silence. The bullet penetrated the command bunker's armor plating and eliminated the Kryllox colonel, who had taken over after Krixmar's promotion to overall commander. The second shot came 5 seconds later, hitting a major who was trying to coordinate artillery fire. The third shot eliminated a communications officer who was attempting to call for help from orbit. Within minutes, the Krillok's defensive positions had lost most of their leadership structure. Without officers to coordinate their response, individual units began making independent decisions that often conflicted with each other. Now, Boram, Yoon said calmly. The explosions began at the outer edges of the Krillok's perimeter and worked inward like a tightening noose. Each charge was perfectly placed to cause maximum confusion while avoiding unnecessary casualties. Supply bunkers erupted in flames. Ammunition dumps detonated in spectacular displays. Vehicle parks disappeared in rolling clouds of smoke and fire, but most importantly, every escape route was systematically blocked. The Krillocks found themselves trapped in an ever-shrinking area with nowhere to run. "This is impossible," Krixmar said aloud as he watched his defensive positions disappear one by one. "How can they be everywhere at once?" The answer was that the humans were not everywhere at once. They were simply in the right places at the right times, using superior planning and coordination to create the illusion of overwhelming presence. Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo led a small team through the chaos, moving like ghosts through the smoke and confusion. Their mission was to capture specific high-value targets while avoiding unnecessary combat. "Target acquired," Choi reported as he observed a group of Krillok's technical specialists trying to repair their communication equipment. Moving to intercept. The specialists never saw the humans coming. One moment they were working frantically to restore contact with their orbital command. The next moment they were surrounded by soldiers who seemed to materialize from thin air. "Surrender," Choi said clearly in the Krillok's language, his weapon trained on the group but not threatening immediate violence. The alien technicians looked at each other in confusion and fear. They had been told that humans were primitive warriors who relied on brute force. These soldiers were obviously something very different. "We surrender," said the senior technician, raising his hands in the universal gesture of submission. Corporal Park Jun-ho was conducting his own mission on the opposite side of the battlefield. As the team's heavy weapons specialist, his job was to eliminate the Krillok's artillery positions that could threaten human operations. "First target acquired," Jun-ho reported as he set up his equipment. "Enemy artillery position, 6 crew members, 1 heavy plasma cannon." His shot was not designed to kill the crew but to disable their weapon permanently. The precision strike destroyed the cannon's power core, rendering it useless while giving the operators time to escape. "Weapon neutralized," Jun-ho reported. "Crew evacuating. Moving to next target." This pattern was repeated throughout the battlefield. Human soldiers eliminated threats efficiently, while minimizing casualties whenever possible. The goal was not to slaughter the enemy, but to render them incapable of continued resistance. By afternoon, the Krillok's force was in complete collapse. Their communications were destroyed, their supplies were gone, their vehicles were burning wrecks, and their command structure had been systematically eliminated. Lieutenant Krixmar gathered his surviving officers in what remained of his command bunker. The walls were cracked from nearby explosions, and the communication equipment was nothing but melted metal. "Options?" he asked desperately. "We could try to break out individually," suggested one officer. "Small groups might escape detection." "And go where?" Krixmar replied. "Our ships are gone, our supplies are destroyed, and we are stranded on this moon." "We could fight to the last warrior," suggested another voice. "Die with honor rather than surrender." Krixmar looked around at his remaining soldiers. They were exhausted, frightened, and demoralized. Most had not eaten in 24 hours, and many were wounded. Asking them to die in a hopeless last stand would be pointless cruelty. "Sir," called a voice from outside the bunker. Krixmar grabbed his weapon and moved to the entrance. Standing 30 yards away, completely in the open, was a single human soldier. The man appeared calm and unthreatened despite being surrounded by thousands of armed aliens. "I am Colonel Yoon of the Earth Forces," the human called out clearly. "I request a meeting with your commanding officer." Krixmar stared in amazement. After 2 days of invisible attacks and ghost-like tactics, the enemy commander was simply walking up to his position and asking for a conversation. "What do you want?" Krixmar shouted back. "To discuss the terms of your surrender," Yoon replied calmly. Surrender? Krixmar felt anger rising in his chest. We still have 4,000 warriors, do you? Yoon asked with what might have been sympathy. At that moment, as if responding to some invisible signal, 99 other human soldiers emerged from concealment all around the Krillok's position. They had been there the entire time, invisible and waiting. Krixmar realized with growing horror that his defensive position was actually a carefully prepared trap. The humans had been herding his forces into this exact location for hours, eliminating escape routes and tightening the noose slowly and methodically. How long have you been watching us? Krixmar asked with genuine curiosity. Since yesterday morning, Yoon replied honestly. We have been observing your movements, learning your patterns, and positioning ourselves for this moment. And you could have killed us all at any time? Yes, Yoon said simply. But that was never our objective. Krixmar looked around at his exhausted, demoralized troops, then at the calm, professional humans who had outfought them so completely. The choice was obvious. What are your terms? He called out. Honorable surrender, Yoon replied. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your soldiers will be treated according to galactic conventions. You will be returned to your home worlds when this exercise is concluded. And the shame of defeat? Krixmar asked. There is no shame in losing to a superior force, Yoon said respectfully. The Galactic Council chambers were completely silent as Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon finished his battle report. The same aliens who had laughed at Earth's military numbers 3 days earlier now sat in stunned quiet, struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Speaker Vorthak stared at the tactical displays showing the battle results. 100 human soldiers had defeated 10,000 Krillok's warriors with 0 casualties on the human side. The numbers seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Let me understand this correctly, Vorthak said slowly. Your force eliminated over 6,000 enemy soldiers, destroyed all their vehicles, captured the remainder, and suffered no losses whatsoever. That is correct, Speaker, Yoon replied calmly. War Master Greyloth stood up from his seat, his cybernetic eye focused on the human colonel with new respect. Colonel Yoon, in my 300 years of military service, I have never seen anything like this battle. With respect, War Master, Yoon said, you have never seen human special operations forces in action before. General Thexmore leaned forward, his 6 arms gesturing frantically. But how is this possible? The mathematics do not work. 100 cannot defeat 10,000. Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo stepped forward slightly. General, with permission to speak? Thexmore nodded, too confused to object. Sir, Choi said respectfully, your mathematics assume that all soldiers are equal. On Earth, we have learned that training, tactics, and intelligence can multiply a soldier's effectiveness by factors of hundreds or even thousands. An alien delegate from the upper seats called out. But surely your weapons technology must be superior to ours. Sergeant First Class Nam Tae-hyun held up his sniper rifle. This weapon uses chemical propellants to fire metal projectiles. Your plasma rifles are far more advanced technologically. Then how did you achieve such accuracy? Asked another voice. Training, Nam replied simply. I have been practicing precision shooting for 20 years. Every shot I fired in this battle was exactly where I intended it to go. Captain Kim Min-ho activated his data tablet and projected holographic displays showing the battle from multiple angles. The aliens watched in fascination as the events unfolded in slow motion. Observe how our forces moved, Kim explained. We did not try to match your numbers. Instead, we eliminated your ability to use those numbers effectively. The display showed how the humans had targeted communication systems first, preventing the Krillok's from coordinating their massive force. Without communication, 10,000 soldiers became hundreds of small, confused groups. Your supply lines were the second priority, Technical Sergeant Kang Bo-ram added. An army without ammunition, fuel, and food becomes helpless very quickly. Third, we eliminated your command structure, Staff Sergeant Oh Da-eun said. Soldiers without leaders cannot execute complex tactics. The holographic display continued, showing how each phase of the human attack had systematically dismantled the alien force's ability to fight effectively. This is not warfare, protested an alien voice from the crowd. This is assassination and sabotage. No, War Master Greyloth said firmly. This is warfare perfected. The chamber fell silent again as the implications began to sink in. Every alien delegate was reconsidering everything they thought they knew about military strategy. Speaker Vorthak looked directly at Colonel Yoon. How many soldiers like these does Earth possess? Every human soldier receives basic training in these tactics, Yoon replied. Our Special Operations Forces represent the highest level of that training. How many Special Operations soldiers? Vorthak pressed the commander Lee Dong-soo, who had been quiet throughout the presentation, stepped forward. That information is classified, Speaker, but I can tell you that Earth takes military professionalism very seriously. An alien delegate stood up in the middle section. Speaker, I move that we immediately grant Earth full membership status with all associated privileges. Seconded, called another voice. Agreed, shouted a third. Within moments, dozens of alien voices were calling for Earth to receive immediate full membership. The same delegates who had mocked humanity's small army were now eager to have those soldiers on their side. But Vorthak raised his clawed hand for silence. There is a more important question we must address, he said gravely. The chamber grew quiet, waiting for the speaker to continue. Earth has demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything in our historical records, Vorthak said. The question is not whether they deserve membership. The question is whether we deserve their alliance. This statement caused excited murmuring throughout the chamber. Several alien species began discussing among themselves in their various languages. General Thexmore stood up again. Speaker, I formally request that Earth consider establishing joint training programs with our military forces. The hegemony wishes to learn these tactics, called another voice. My species offers technology exchange for military instruction, added a third Ambassador Park. So Young stepped forward for the first time since entering the chamber. Earth appreciates your interest in our military methods. However, we must first establish formal diplomatic relationships. Of course, Vorthak said quickly. Earth is granted full membership immediately, with all privileges and responsibilities. Now about those training programs. Over the following hours, the council session transformed into an eager negotiation. Species that had dismissed Earth as militarily insignificant were now competing to offer the best terms for alliance and cooperation. War Master Greyloth approached Colonel Yoon during a break in the proceedings. Colonel, I have a personal request. Yes, War Master, Yoon replied. I would like permission to study your tactical methods, not to copy them but to understand them. In 3 centuries of warfare, I have never encountered anything so elegant. Elegant? Yoon asked, surprised by the word choice. Yes, Greyloth said thoughtfully. Your approach achieved maximum results with minimum resources and minimum casualties. It was like watching an artist work instead of a soldier. Dr. Shin Yun-young, Earth's military historian who had arrived with reinforcements, overheard the conversation. War Master, would you like to know something interesting about human military history? Very much, Greyloth replied. Throughout our history, our most famous victories have been achieved by small, highly trained forces defeating much larger armies. It is a recurring theme in human warfare. Give me an example, Greyloth requested. 300 Spartan warriors held off tens of thousands of Persian soldiers at Thermopylae. A few hundred British longbowmen defeated thousands of French knights at Agincourt. Small special forces units have repeatedly accomplished missions that entire armies could not. Greyloth's cybernetic eye whirred as he processed this information. Your entire species has been developing these tactics for thousands of years. Correct, Dr. Shin replied. We learned early that survival often depends on making the most of limited resources. As the day continued, formal agreements began taking shape. Earth would provide military advisors to help alien species develop more effective tactics. In exchange, Earth would receive advanced technology, favorable trade agreements, and full protection under galactic law. But perhaps more importantly, Earth had earned something that could not be negotiated: respect. Lieutenant Krixmar, who had been invited to address the council about his experience, stood before the assembled delegates. His words were broadcast throughout galactic space. I commanded 4,000 warriors in this battle, he said. We were well-equipped, well-trained by our standards, and confident in our superiority. Within hours, we were completely defeated by an enemy we could barely see. He paused, looking around the chamber. The humans did not defeat us through superior technology or greater numbers. They defeated us through superior thinking. They understood warfare in ways we had never considered. As the session finally concluded, Ambassador Park found herself surrounded by alien diplomats eager to establish relationships with Earth. What had begun as a request for basic membership had become the foundation for Earth's emergence as a major galactic power. Speaker Vorthak approached Commander Lee personally. Commander, the Council wishes to offer Earth a permanent position as military strategic advisor to all member worlds. That is a generous offer, Speaker, Lee replied diplomatically. Earth will need to consider the responsibilities involved. Of course, Vorthak said. But please understand what we witnessed today changes everything. Your species has shown us that military strength is not measured in numbers alone. Colonel Yoon gathered his soldiers as they prepared to return to their transport. Each of them had become famous throughout the galaxy in the span of a single day. Their names would be remembered in military academies across thousands of worlds. Sir, Master Sergeant Choi asked quietly, do you think the aliens will actually learn from this? Yoon looked around the chamber at the excited alien delegates. Some will. Others will try to copy our tactics without understanding the principles behind them. But change has begun, and Earth? Choi asked. Earth will never be underestimated again, Yoon replied with certainty. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, War Master Greyloth made one final request. He approached Colonel Yoon with what appeared to be humility, unusual for a warrior of his reputation. Colonel, Greyloth said, I have one last question. 1 year after the battle on Karo 7, Commander Lee Dong-soo stood in the newly built Earth Military Academy on Nexus Prime. The facility was enormous, with training grounds that could accommodate hundreds of alien students from dozens of different species. Through the tall windows, he watched young officers from across the galaxy learning human tactical methods. Sir, Captain Kim Min-ho said as he approached with the morning reports, we now have students from over 300 different worlds. Lee nodded as he reviewed the numbers. The demand for human military training had exceeded every prediction. What had started as a simple demonstration had become the foundation for a new era of galactic military thinking. How are they adapting to our methods? Lee asked. Better than expected, Kim replied. The younger officers especially seem to understand our concepts of efficiency and precision. In one of the training areas below, Sergeant First Class Nam Tae-hyun was teaching advanced marksmanship to a group of mixed alien students. Each species had different physical capabilities, but all were learning the human principles of patience, accuracy, and careful target selection. Remember, Nam called out to his students, every shot must have a purpose. Wasted ammunition is wasted opportunity. A young Krilox officer raised his massive hand. Instructor Nam, my people have always believed that more bullets mean better chances of hitting the target. And what happened when you faced human forces with that philosophy? Nam asked gently. The Krilox officer looked embarrassed. We were defeated completely, sir. Exactly, Nam said. Volume of fire means nothing without accuracy and purpose. In another section of the academy, Technical Sergeant Kang Bo-ram was demonstrating demolitions techniques to a class of engineering students. Her focus was not on creating bigger explosions, but on achieving maximum effect with minimum resources. Observe, Bo-ram said as she set up a small charge. We can disable this entire vehicle with an explosive device smaller than your fist. The key is knowing exactly where to place it. A student from the insectoid Thek species clicked his mandibles in amazement. On my world, we would use bombs 10 times larger to achieve the same result, and require 10 times more resources, Bo-ram replied. Efficiency means accomplishing your mission with the smallest possible footprint. Master Sergeant Choi Sang-woo walked through the academy corridors, observing classes and checking on student progress. In his 25 years of military service, he had never imagined he would be teaching alien species how to fight. But the results spoke for themselves. Sergeant Choi, called a familiar voice. He turned to see Lieutenant Krixmar approaching. The former Krilox warrior was now one of the Academy's most valued instructors, teaching from his personal experience of facing human tactics. Lieutenant, Choi said with a smile, how are your students progressing? Remarkably well, Krixmar replied. Today I taught them about the importance of communication security. 3 months ago, my own forces were defeated because humans intercepted our radio transmissions. And now? Choi asked. Now my students understand that information warfare can be more powerful than any weapon, Krixmar said proudly. The two walked together toward the Academy's main auditorium, where Colonel Yoon Ji-hoon was delivering a lecture on strategic thinking to senior officers from across the galaxy. The most important lesson, Yoon was saying to his audience, is that victory should always serve a greater purpose. Defeating an enemy means nothing if you cannot build lasting peace afterward. An alien officer from the back row raised a tentacle. Colonel, my species has always fought for territory and resources. What greater purpose could there be? Security for your people, Yoon replied. Protection of the innocent. Creating conditions where conflicts become unnecessary. These are the goals that make military service meaningful. War Master Greyloth sat in the front row taking careful notes. Despite his centuries of experience, he found human military philosophy endlessly fascinating. The combination of tactical excellence and ethical restraint was unlike anything in galactic history. After the lecture, Greyloth approached Colonel Yoon with obvious enthusiasm. Colonel, Greyloth said, I have news from the Outer Rim territories. Good news, I hope? Yoon asked. Excellent news, Greyloth replied. The pirate fleets that have terrorized that region for decades have largely disbanded. They know they cannot compete against human-trained defense forces. This was the Academy's greatest success story. As more systems adopted human tactical methods, criminal organizations found their traditional approaches obsolete. Pirates and raiders who had once been serious threats were now avoiding any confrontation with properly trained forces. Any reports of criminal groups trying to learn our methods? Yoon asked with concern. A few attempts, Greyloth admitted, but they fail to understand the ethical components. Without proper discipline and moral training, our tactics become self-defeating. This had been a deliberate design feature of the human training program. The tactical methods were inseparable from the ethical framework that guided their use. Criminal organizations could copy the techniques, but without the underlying philosophy, they could not achieve the same results. General No Incio arrived for his weekly inspection of the Academy. As Earth's senior military representative to the galaxy, he was responsible for ensuring that human knowledge was being used appropriately. General, Colonel Yoon reported, we have completed training for the first class of galactic military ethics instructors. How many? No asked. 50 officers from 30 different species, Yoon replied. They will return to their home worlds to establish ethical training programs for their own forces. This was perhaps the most important development in the Academy's mission. Rather than simply teaching tactics, they were creating a new generation of military leaders who understood the moral responsibilities that came with effective fighting capability. Dr. Shin Yoon-young emerged from the Academy's research library, her arms full of reports and analysis documents. As the galaxy's leading expert on human military methods, she was documenting the long-term effects of tactical revolution. General No, she called excitedly, you need to see these statistics. What have you discovered? No asked. Galactic military spending has decreased by 40% this year, Dr. Shin announced. Species that adopt human methods need far fewer soldiers and much less equipment. What are they doing with the savings? Yoon asked. Infrastructure development, education, scientific research, and colonization projects, Dr. Shin replied. The resources formerly spent on massive armies are being redirected to peaceful purposes. This transformation was happening across hundreds of worlds. As species learned to achieve security with smaller, more efficient forces, they discovered enormous resources available for other priorities. Any negative consequences? General No asked. Some unemployment among former military personnel, Dr. Shin admitted, but most are finding new careers in engineering, exploration, and emergency services. Their training translates well to civilian applications. Ambassador Ryu Jae-sung joined the group in the Academy's main corridor. His expression showed satisfaction mixed with amazement. General, Ryu said, I bring news from the latest council session. Proceed. No replied. The council has voted to establish the Human Military Academy as the official training center for all galactic defense forces, Ryu announced. Every species in the Alliance will send their best officers here for advanced education. The implications were staggering. Earth had become the military capital of the galaxy not through conquest, but through demonstration of superior methods and ethical standards. What about our own forces? No asked. Do we have enough instructors? We are expanding gradually, Kim replied. Every human special operations veteran who volunteers for teaching duty multiplies our training capacity exponentially. And the students become teachers themselves, added Krixmar. I now train twice as many officers as any human instructor, using methods I learned from Sergeant Choi. This multiplicative effect was spreading human military philosophy throughout the galaxy faster than anyone had anticipated. Each trained officer returned home to teach others, creating an expanding network of tactically competent and ethically grounded military leaders. Sir, Captain Kim said quietly to General No, sometimes I wonder if we have changed too much too quickly. What do you mean? No asked. A year ago, we were just trying to gain basic membership in the Council, Kim explained. Now we are essentially running galactic military policy. Are we ready for this responsibility? General No looked around the academy at hundreds of alien students learning human methods with dedication and enthusiasm. Each one would return home to make their corner of the galaxy more secure and peaceful. Captain, No said thoughtfully, we did not seek this responsibility. It was given to us by species who recognized that our approach works better than their traditional methods. And if we make mistakes? Kim asked. Then we learn from them, No replied. That is what professionals do. As the day continued, reports arrived from across the galaxy showing the continuing transformation of military culture. Former enemy species were cooperating on joint training exercises. Trade disputes were being resolved through arbitration rather than threats. Border conflicts were being prevented by the presence of human-trained peacekeeping forces. General, Dr. Shin said as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports, I believe we have achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. What is that? No asked. We have made war so precise and decisive that it has become economically impractical, Dr. Shin explained. When conflicts can be resolved quickly and with minimal casualties, leaders prefer negotiation to the risks of military action. It was true. The galaxy had learned that human-trained forces could end wars so efficiently that starting one had become an enormous gamble. Political leaders found it easier to compromise than to risk total military defeat. Sir, Colonel Yoon added, we are also seeing changes in how species resolve internal disputes. Human conflict resolution methods are being adapted for civilian use. Examples? No asked. Labor disputes, resource allocation conflicts, territorial disagreements between colonies, Yoon listed. The same principles that make our military tactics effective also work for peaceful problem solving. As evening approached, General No walked through the academy one final time. In classrooms and training areas, alien students were learning not just how to fight more effectively, but how to think more clearly about when fighting was necessary at all. Sir, War Master Greyloth said as he joined No on his inspection tour, may I ask you a personal question? Of course, No replied. Did your people expect this outcome when Colonel Yoon accepted our challenge a year ago? General No considered the question carefully. We hoped to earn respect and gain full membership in the Council. We never imagined we would transform galactic civilization. And now? Greyloth asked. Now we have a responsibility to ensure that our influence continues to serve peace rather than conflict, No said. That is the burden of effective power. As the artificial night settled over Nexus Prime, the lights of the human military academy continued to shine. Inside, students from hundreds of worlds were learning that true strength came not from size or aggression, but from discipline, intelligence, and the wisdom to use force only when necessary. The Council's laughter had died when the Green Berets arrived. In its place had grown something far more valuable. A new understanding that military excellence and moral responsibility were not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of true professionalism. And across the galaxy, that lesson was creating a more peaceful universe, one well-trained soldier at a time.